What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome back to another video. Week 15 is here in the NFL, and the Dallas Cowboys are traveling to Buffalo to take on the 7-6 Bills. Let's talk about it.
Prescott, touchdown. Throw, look at middle, sack again by Parsons again. CeeDee Lamb, was he down? They say no for now, and he's into the end zone.
Well, welcome back. Week 15 in the NFL. Can you believe it, man? We're already here. The season went by just like that. But be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Cowboys content. We got a fun video planned talking about this big-time matchup between the Cowboys and the Bills, talking playoff clinching scenarios for the Cowboys and the rest of the other teams. And we're going to be talking about my opinions about potentially, can the Cowboys still get that number one seed and possibly the NFC East? But be sure to like and subscribe. And let's jump on in. The Dallas Cowboys are rocking a 5-game winning streak. Coming off a very big win against the Philadelphia Frauds on Sunday Night Football. And, everything's going according to plan. We looked at the schedule before, this 5-game stretch, this 4-game stretch that's coming up. And we said the Cowboys needed to do this and do that to be in a good position. And they are. They are. And, I'm going to admit something, and it might be a little bit unconventional, but I'm actually pretty unnervous about this game. Seattle, that was a big one. The Philadelphia Eagles, that was a big game for this team to win. This one, weirdly enough, I'm chill. And I think it's just because it's a non-conference opponent and it's on the road. And I think the Cowboys, and like I said, this is unconventional, so you can completely disagree with me when I say this. But what the Cowboys needed to accomplish, they already did in terms of their playoff positioning and having that tiebreaker and getting that split with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we'll get more into depth into that, but I'm actually approaching this game pretty chill. And I'm really just now excited to see if this team can get it done. And you guys know me, when we talk about road games, I need to see this Dallas Cowboys team replicate the success that they had at home and take it on the road, because they obviously, the Dallas Cowboys, we've heard it in the past couple of weeks, the Dallas Cowboys have a 15-game home winning streak right now. I mean, they were 8-0 last year, they're 7-0 this year, but the main thing is their performance on the road. Last season they were 4-4, and if you include the playoffs, they were 1-1. You add those two together, they're 5-5. Mediocre, right? Average. Mid. and it's really a coin flip on what type of team you're going to see perform. And I think it just makes a lot of sense, right? Because hats off to Mike McCarthy, right? 3 straight seasons with 10-plus wins, but you got to analyze and critique the attention to details, and things like that show up in the most pressured moments, and we've seen that the past couple of seasons, and we see it on the road. And you have to minimize the mistakes that you make on the road, because if you continue those, you can get away with that at home. But on the road, playing against a team that is comfortable in their own environment, they can really take advantage of that. So the Dallas Cowboys so far this season are 3-3 on the road. I mean, they're right where they were last season. And you look at these final 4 games, right? The Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the Detroit Lions, the Washington Commanders. 3 out of the last 4 games are road games. So this is... intensity is getting kicked up, and we're really going to know what kind of team that we have here. Granted, like I said, I'm very chill approaching this game. I'm very calm approaching this game. I'm just excited to see whether they can do it or not. I don't believe, and again, this is unconventional, but I don't believe the stakes are as high for this game as it was for the past 2 games. I just don't believe so. I think things are getting settled in the NFC conference, and we have a pretty good idea who the number 1 seed is going to be. We have a pretty good idea of where the Cowboys are going to fall. I mean, it's going to be the number 5, number 2, or number 1 seed. That's where basically the Dallas Cowboys are at, and it would take a wild thing for them to lose the last 4 games and end up in a poor spot, but I'm pretty settled. Like, the Cowboys did what they were supposed to the past couple of weeks to cement their place in positioning in the NFC playoff picture. But like I said, 5-game winning streak, and weirdly enough, the Dallas Cowboys are not favored in this game. They're actually underdogs going to Buffalo, and I think the last time I checked the point spread, and you can comment down below and let me know what it is right now. But it's the Bills are favored by 2.5 points, which is interesting because usually they give the home team just, it used to be they used to give them just 3 points, right, being a home team. But that's very interesting, knowing the Bills are 7-6. They got a big win over the Chiefs. and the Cowboys are on a 5-game winning streak. But I think a lot of people are counting into that road playoff game, or that road game that the Cowboys are going to have there in Buffalo, and the Bills being at home. And they're kind of in their element. But if you check the weather right now, it's not going to be a snow game. It's not going to be anything crazy like that. It's actually pretty tamed weather expectations for being in Buffalo. But regardless, let's jump on in. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be a fun video. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. So let's take a little bit of history, right? This Cowboys and Bills matchup. I mean, they don't see each other too often. It seems every 4 years that they find each other and they play each other. Last time that they played, a little bit salty, right? It doesn't bode well. It was Thanksgiving. The Bills came to AT&T Stadium and they beat the Cowboys, and Dak Prescott had one of his worst games of his career. Everyone's talking about that. Everyone's like pulling up clips. Like, they kept their receipts. The fans, Cowboys fans, kept their receipts about the Bills were mocking Dak's celebration and Zeke's celebration. I try to not get too emotionally invested in that, and I just try to look at the stats, hence why we're an unbiased and realistic Cowboys show. So that's the last time that they played. But last time they played in Buffalo, Dak Prescott was not the quarterback. Tony Romo was not the quarterback. It was actually Kellen Moore, believe it or not. And Cowboys ended up losing that game in Buffalo. But that's hilarious. Last time we played in Buffalo, Kellen Moore was the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. I remember that game. I remember that season. It was not a fun one. But if you stuck around that season, you earned your Cowboys fan badge. I mean, there's been a lot of tough seasons, but that was definitely one of the roughest. Now, last time the Dallas Cowboys won in Buffalo was that crazy, bizarre Monday night football game back in 2007, believe it or not. It's been a minute since the Cowboys have won in Buffalo. That was back in 2007, 16 years ago. I mean, Tony Romo was on the team. Terrell Owens was on the team. Wade Phillips was the head coach. Just a completely different looking team. And it took something very improbable. I mean, it took a miracle. I remember that game like it was yesterday, and it was insane, man. I remember being on the phone with my dad watching that entire game, and we were just, I could not believe, what is it, Tony Romo threw like 4 or 5 interceptions, and just an insane game. Still, I think if I'm thinking about the craziest of Cowboys games, that is definitely in the top 3 in my lifetime. It might just be the craziest improbable win. I would maybe sneak in the Atlanta Falcons watermelon kick in there as one of the craziest wins that I've seen in my lifetime, which has been 27 years. But comment down below, how old were you when that Monday Night Football game happened with the Cowboys and the Bills? And if you haven't seen it because you're too young enough, look up the highlights, watch that game. I kid you not, it was ridiculous. And the Cowboys kept being undefeated. They went 5-0. Then it set up a 5-0 matchup against the New England Patriots, and it was radical. I mean, the Cowboys went 13-3 that season. So there's your little bit of Cowboys and Bills history. Obviously, it goes deeper than that. Obviously, the Cowboys and the Bills played in the Super Bowl multiple times, and the Cowboys beat the Bills multiple times in the Super Bowl. So this team goes back. It's a nice little rivalry, especially with the Super Bowls included in there. But be sure to like and subscribe. Before we jump into this video, we're going to be talking about some playoff clinching scenarios, and this is your place to get the update on them. And of course, there's a few more than we had last year, or last week, excuse me. And so we're going to go through each and every one of them. First off, we're going to start off with the AFC, right? The Baltimore Ravens have the first playoff clinching scenario for the AFC playoff picture, and I'll put it up right here. Lot of scenarios, right? 9 of them. The Baltimore Ravens, all of them would have to include them winning. Now, they are taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday Night Football. In my picks, I do believe the Ravens are going to win that one. But as you can see, a lot of things need to happen here. I mean, the Broncos need to lose to the Lions, or the Cowboys need to, the Bills need to lose to the Cowboys. And just, you know, I could see the Broncos losing to the Lions because I got the Lions winning over the Broncos. But, you know, a lot of things need to happen their way. It's hard to say that they're going to make the playoffs, or they're at least going to clinch their spot in Week 15. But, hey, man, anything can happen. I would say maybe that number 2 spot might be more probable. The Ravens winning. the Broncos losing and the Browns losing, possibly. I don't know. Those are your playoff clinching scenarios for the Ravens. Comment down below. Do you think they make the playoffs or not? Let me know. Now let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture. We get a couple more scenarios than the three that we had last week. We had the Detroit Lions getting their first set of playoff clinching scenarios, and the list is long for the Detroit Lions to be able to clinch a playoff spot. I'll put it up right there. There's 16 total. And as you guys know, I'm usually the one to cut this list in half because, as you can see, 8 through 16 all require a Lions tie. Look, ties happen in the NFL, and we've seen it in the history of the NFL, but I'm just not going to bet on the fact that the Lions are going to tie with the Broncos there. It would be crazy. I mean, I will fully admit that I was wrong, and I'll eat crow if it's a tied ball game. But you take a look here, again, highly improbable. I'm looking at that first one. Lions, I got the Lions beating the Broncos, like I said. I do have the Eagles beating the Seahawks, so that's something that could work in their favor. And then you have either the Packers losing to the Buccaneers or the Vikings losing. So, I mean, things could go their way, but it all matters if they take care of business. And that's a tough game for the Detroit Lions to beat the Denver Broncos. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. The Philadelphia Eagles, for the past couple of weeks, have had a few playoff clinching scenarios that if they win, they're in. But, of course, they've lost back-to-back games against the 49ers and the Cowboys. So, let's take a look at their playoff clinching scenarios. Same scenario, right? I mean, we could go through each and every one of these 9 scenarios. Some of them include ties, but the simplest one is on Monday Night Football. If they win, they're in, they clinch a spot, and right there with the 49ers, they would be the second team in the NFC to clinch that playoff spot. Now, for the Eagles, they play Monday night. So a lot of these scenarios would actually work their way out before they kick off the ball to start the game. So they may just, say, for example, that second scenario. So if the Packers lose and the Falcons lose and the Rams lose, I'm not saying that one's going to happen, but say if those things do happen, then they would have already known before the game even starts that they would make the playoffs. And they're still in that race for that number 1 seed, with the 49ers having the tiebreaker because the 49ers beat the Eagles. And so if they win, they're in. Pretty simple. And I do believe the Eagles bounce back against the Seahawks, even though it would benefit the Dallas Cowboys if the Eagles lost to the Seahawks. But we'll see. Geno Smith's status is still up in the air. Now let's go ahead and move to the simplest playoff clinching scenario, and that's your San Francisco 49ers. They already clinched a playoff spot last week, but this one includes clinching the division that is the NFC West, and it's fairly simple, and I'll put it up right there. If they win, they will clinch the NFC West, and they will be the division champs. And then another scenario, for whatever reason, if the 49ers lose to the Cardinals, which I don't believe will happen, if the Rams end up losing to the Commanders, which I don't believe will happen, that a Rams loss would guarantee the division title for the Rams or for the San Francisco 49ers. I believe the 49ers can take care of business here, and they get the win, and they beat the Cardinals, and they're division champs. But last but not least, that takes us to the Dallas Cowboys. And again, long list, as you can see, 14 scenarios on how the Dallas Cowboys can get to the playoffs and punch their ticket to the playoffs. Now, I'll just say this before we go through this. I think the Cowboys clinch a playoff spot, win or lose. If they win, obviously they're in. And spoiler alert, that's the scenario. That's the simplest scenario. If the Cowboys go to Buffalo and they beat the Bills, boom, you're in the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. And it's as simple as that. But if they do not win, and if they lose, there are a couple scenarios that I personally see that could easily happen realistically, that would guarantee the Cowboys going to the playoffs. I believe they involve Tampa Bay losing because I think the Packers bounce back. So you'd be looking at scenarios 6 through 10. I mean, there's already 5 scenarios right there. I could see the Vikings. I got the Bengals beating the Vikings, so the Vikings would lose. And then I got the Seahawks losing to the Eagles. So if the Eagles win, it actually does work in the Cowboys' favor if the Cowboys end up losing. There's a lot of scenarios that work for the Cowboys going into Week 15, and that's why I believe, like I said, I believe the Cowboys go to the playoffs and punch their ticket to the playoffs, win or lose, no matter what happens. But a lot of playoff scenarios. Comment down below if you have any questions. I am happy to answer them. But those are officially by the NFL Other than that, there are no other teams that can officially punch their ticket to the playoffs. There are a few teams that will be knocked out of contention, but we're just going to be talking about those playoff clinching scenarios. But other than that, let's move on to the next segment of the video, and be sure to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Let's talk about this number one seed in the NFC East and the realistic possibilities of where these teams stand, because right now it's a three team race. You got the Philadelphia Eagles, you got the Dallas Cowboys, and the San Francisco 49ers all sitting at a 10-3 tie. Now 49ers obviously have the tiebreaker over the Eagles because the 49ers smashed the Eagles, and as of right now, if the season ends today, the Cowboys would have that tiebreaker. That's why the Cowboys are number one in the NFC East over the Eagles. But if we play out this scenario and say if everybody wins out, then the Eagles would ultimately have that tiebreaker due to their common opponent records and the common opponent records and their conference records. And I'll put that list there again because that's the list in the order that we will look at in terms of tie-breaking scenarios. So what do I believe is going to happen? And what would it take for each of these teams? Well, the 49ers, they have the lead right now. So if they win out, and if we take a look at their schedule, we'll put it up here. You got the Cardinals, you got the Ravens, you got the Commanders, and you got the Rams. For the 49ers to clinch that number one seed and have home field advantage and have that first round bye, if they just win out, which is easily possible, beating the Cardinals, the Ravens, the Commanders, and the Rams, the one game that sticks out right there is obviously that primetime matchup with on Christmas against the Baltimore Ravens. I actually like the 49ers in that game. If it was in Baltimore, I'd probably like the Ravens in that scenario, but now the Ravens got to travel all the way to San Francisco, and they got to be on the road, and they got to take on the 49ers, so it doesn't really bode well for them in that scenario. So 49er fans, if you guys win out, which is a very high probability, and even if you go 3-1, there's a high possibility that you will clinch it because you have the tiebreaker over the Cowboys and the Eagles. So it would take a lot to answer your questions. It would take a lot for the Cowboys to clinch the number one seed at this point as we're getting a tighter window with 4 weeks left in the season. It would take a lot. The 49ers would have to, I would probably say they would have to lose at least 2 games and to give the Cowboys a little bit of wiggle room. But obviously, it's as simple as if the 49ers drop a game and the Cowboys win out, that would get them the number one seed, with the Eagles losing one more game as well. So that's what you would be looking at. I personally think that the 49ers are going to hang on to that number one seed, and they control their own destiny. And I could see them getting that number one seed. Now, you take a look at the Eagles. What about their possibilities of getting it? Well, I think they really screwed up. They had a really good stretch, right? Starting in week 7 with the Miami Dolphins. They went 5-1, go until week 13 against the San Francisco 49ers. But they really had their chance to put their stamp on the league and take care of the 2 contenders in their conference, the 49ers and the Cowboys, and they completely wet the bed there, losing 42-19 against San Francisco at home and losing 33-13 to the Dallas Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. They really ruined their chances, and like I said, unbiased and realistically, as a fan, I'll say that they're frauds, but unbiased and realistically, I think there's a lot of flaws that came out. Now, do I think they're going to completely tank and lose the last 4 games? No, come on, let's be real. But it does get a little bit difficult because if you look at the schedule, you got the Seahawks. Of course, that depends on Geno Smith and his status, and obviously they're hungry because they got to get back into that playoff contention, and they're on a 4-game losing streak, and they're going to come with some energy on Monday night. Then you take on the Giants twice, right? And the Giants are currently on a 3-game winning streak with Tommy DeVito, and so anything can go, especially in those division games. Then you got the Arizona Cardinals, who have a somewhat solid defense, and Kyler Murray's back, so that would probably be the one that I would expect the Eagles to take care of. But I would say, and I'm calling it now, I think the Eagles will drop at least 2 games, and they will go 2-2 in those final 4 games, and they will end the year with the 12-5 record. That's my prediction. I'm telling you right now, that's most likely what's going to happen. I don't trust the Eagles. And so with that being said, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys, because the Dallas Cowboys, what does it take, right, to get the number one seed, to get the NFC East? Well, as a Cowboys fan, I'm here to tell you, I've kind of let that ship sail. At least I'm not holding out for that number one seed probability. It's just, it's a lot needs to happen. And if we get to week 17, week 18, and the situation's there, let's talk about it. But I think the more realistic scenario at this point for me is the NFC East. And I think that's a lot more important because if you at least win the division, you're going to get that number 2 seed and you're at least guaranteed to host one playoff game, which is super important for the Dallas Cowboys, knowing their struggles on the road and knowing their success at home. So if you want my opinion, if you want what I believe is going to happen, I believe the Dallas Cowboys really have a prime situation here to grab the NFC East. And like I said, I'll tell you, this is my prediction here. I think the 49ers are going to go at least 3-1 and at least 3-1, and it would not surprise me if they went 4-0 and they won out barring any injuries, and that would lock in the number 1 seed for them. Now, what I believe is going to happen is, like I said, I believe the Philadelphia Eagles cannot be trusted. And on paper, it looks like a pretty simple schedule for them to walk into the playoffs with 4 games left. I don't believe so. I believe they drop 2 games and they go 2-2 in the final 4 games. Now, if you do the math, that's going to drop them down to a 12-5 record. Where do I believe the Dallas Cowboys are going to end up? If you look at those final 4 games, at worst, they're going to go 2-2. At best, obviously 4-0, but I got them right in the middle. I believe the Dallas Cowboys go 3-1 in the next 4 games, and that would put them at a record of 13-4. And with the Eagles dropping 2 games, that would mean that the Cowboys would win the NFC East because they would have a better record by 1 game over the Philadelphia Eagles, and that would mean that the Cowboys would be in as the number 2 seed, and they would be hosting whoever is in that number 7 seed. That is my prediction. That is what I believe is going to happen. Bookmark this, save this. I believe that day will come, and we'll come back to week 18 when all is said and done, and we'll see where the Dallas Cowboys are at. But I think the Cowboys will be NFC East champs. But be sure to like and subscribe there. We went through playoff clinching scenarios, and we went through the Cowboys' probabilities and everyone's probabilities of having that number 1 seed and the NFC East. But let's go ahead and talk about this game. Cowboys and Bills. And like I said, I'm very chill about this game just because we don't see the Bills quite often. So, if we lost to a more common opponent like the Seahawks or the Eagles, I'm hot, right? Because that matters in the NFC playoff picture. But with this game, of course I'm excited, and I really want the Cowboys to be better as a road team and have a better record than being 500 on the road. But let's jump on in because we got this Cowboys defense versus this Bills offense. And of course, stats are only there to supplement an opinion. They're not there to give you a concrete answer on this one. And when we looked at that Cowboys and Eagles stat comparison, I mean, it was glaring that one was lacking than the other. And I told you guys, I told you guys that they were frauds. They were overrated. And what did we see on Sunday Night Football? This is why you guys should listen to me. The Cowboys beat the Eagles 33-13, and I told you it wasn't even going to be close, and it wasn't. But this is interesting. The point differential for the Bills is very close, and they've lost a lot of close games. And they've struggled a little bit closing those games. But this is the time of the year where it doesn't really matter what you've done the first 15 weeks of football. If you can close out and win most of your games in these final 4 games when it matters in the month of December, you can really sneak into the playoffs. And as we all say, right, as we all know, the playoffs is a brand new season. Anything can happen. If you come in as a wild card, you can do a lot of dangerous stuff as a wild card team. So when you look at this, it's awfully close. I'm not going to lie. And that's concerning. You look at their offense, right? 5th in the league. They can move the ball. They have a very talented quarterback, dual attack with Josh Allen, and Stephon Diggs is a great wide receiver. And I'm going to tell you right now, it would not surprise me if he had a game here on Sunday. Look, I like our guys. I like Stephon Gilmore. I like DaRon Bland. Obviously, Gilmore had a great game against A.J. Brown. But let me talk about DaRon Bland here for a second. Obviously, he set the record for the pick sixes most in the NFL season in a single season. But let me just be honest and realistic here. DaRon Bland struggles in coverage. And he does get interceptions, right? He does bounce back. He does have a lot of resistance. He has a lot of tenacity. But don't fool yourself in thinking that he does struggle. I mean, against the Washington Commanders on Thanksgiving, he was struggling in coverage on those short passes, and a lot of teams know it. That's why they're picking on him. That's exactly why the Seahawks picked on DaRon Bland. Now, am I saying he's a bad player? Not at all. Don't get it twisted. I'm not hating on DaRon Bland, but I'm saying there are some weaknesses in his game that if you take the big highlights out of his season so far that he's had with the pick sixes and the other interceptions, he's a glaring spot. And this Bills offense, they're clicking at the right time. And don't let this record fool you going into this game just because they're 7-6 and they're one game over 500. And, because we beat the Seahawks a couple weeks ago and they were one game over 500, well, it's going to be a similar situation that we're going to beat them just because we beat the Seahawks. No, as far as I'm concerned, both these teams are 0-0 right now. It's a new season and these 4 games are pivotal, and you have the chance to be a different team with these 4 games left in the season. So that's concerning to me. It's awfully very close. Obviously, our defense, I believe, is coming off of one of its best games, if not its best game, against a true competitor like the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's going to be a true test right here. I mean, this pressure, the pressure that the Cowboys generate, even that's difficult, right? Because Josh Allen is so strong. He's so tall. He can break tackles. He can extend plays. I mean, he did it against the Kansas City Chiefs. Josh Allen is just a really good quarterback, in my opinion. He's very hard to game plan against, and he has such an arm, right? He can spread the field. We're going to have our hands full, and I don't think this is going to be an easy test. It would honestly surprise me if this was a blowout or if this was one-sided in the Cowboys' favor. I believe this game is going to be neck to neck. I think it's going to be back-to-back. It's going to be a tough fight. Be sure to tune in because, this is December football. This is where it gets real. So let's take a look at the Buffalo Bills schedule here, right? If you look at, I don't see anyone that they've beat that proves the Bills are a true contender in the NFL. But like I said, kind of it's the final 4 games. It's a different season, but so far I'm not seeing anything clicking. The Miami Dolphins is, technically beating a good team, but the Dolphins haven't beat a good team themselves. And the Kansas City Chiefs, if you want to know my opinions about the Chiefs, I don't believe they're really that good of a team. They're lacking weapons around Patrick Mahomes, and they haven't been able to close games. So you look at those are the 2 wins that pop off, right? Just by name basis, the Dolphins and the Chiefs. But, if you look really into the stats like we do on this show, they're not really that impressive, and the Bills struggled. I mean, the Bills are really good at fighting, man. Like they're kind of like the Eagles, right? If you get in a room with them one-on-one, and if you give them an opportunity, they will make you pay. The point is to not let them get there. And if this game was at home at AT&T Stadium, I would feel a lot better, to be honest. But because it's on the road and because I know this team so well and how it's a coin flip, it's a tough matchup. But there's an element of surprise with the Bills. We don't play them that much. We don't know them as well as we know the Eagles or any other NFC opponents. So that's really where this game gets a little bit interesting. And this is a true test of our coaching. And this is what you see in the Super Bowl, right? Sometimes when you make it to the Super Bowl, you're playing a team you never seen before or never played before. But the better team wins that day because you had good coaching, you had good scheme, you had good players. I'm excited to see how well this coaching measures up to the task of playing an opponent that they don't normally see. This is a great measuring marker for this team to see, because for a lack of a better example, it's sometimes simpler or at least an easier task to beat a division opponent because you see him twice a season. So if you didn't do something successful the first time, hopefully adjustments that you make, knowing you're going to see him a second time, can get you that win or get you that leverage in the second time that you meet. Or NFC opponents, right? Like for a while, for 5 straight seasons, we saw the Minnesota Vikings, and for 5 straight seasons, and we were just switching where we played. We were playing at their stadium, we were playing at AT&T Stadium. So this is a really good test to take a look at our coaching, to know if whether or not they're the real deal or not. And, I think they've done enough to prove themselves, and tip our hats to Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer, and Dan Quinn. But I'm really excited just to see. Again, I'm not nervous. I'm not anxious about any of that. I'm just excited to see where we're at this team, because I think these are low stakes. Call me crazy, but this is low stakes. If we win, that's great. But if we lose, it's not the biggest deal. I know that sounds super weird to say and not the thing that you necessarily want to hear this late in the season, but the Cowboys took care of the games that they were supposed to, and they're in a really good position. Like, they're going to the playoffs. It's just a matter of where their seeding is right now. So I'm not really fretting on this game. It's not something that I'm super anxious about. But I anticipate this defense will have a tough fight, and they'll need everyone on board to be physical. I think it's going to be a great test. I'm looking for big days from DeMarcus Lawrence, Osa Odighizuwa, and this defensive line just has to set the tone, and they need to replicate their physicality that they had against the Philadelphia Eagles and take it against the Buffalo Bills, because the Bills are in their element. Whether it's cold or whatever, the Bills are going to be in their element, and we got to replicate. We got to be able to take what we do at home, take it on the road. I hope it can happen. It's going to be tough. That's all I'm going to say, but let's jump into my defensive predictions here. I believe this is a guarantee. If you're a betting man, betting woman, you can ride this in the bank. Josh Allen will throw an interception. Lock it in. He will throw it. The Cowboys will have an interception on Sunday night. And then I do believe the Dallas Cowboys force some more takeaways on Sunday afternoon, and I believe they force a fumble. And then last but not least, I believe the Cowboys get to Josh Allen 3 times, 3 sacks Sunday afternoon. And I believe Micah Parsons has one of those, so he increases his sack total on the season. And those are my defensive predictions. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more Cowboys content as we are looking at this Week 15 matchup with the Buffalo Bills as the Cowboys are on the road again. Let's bring up the stats again. Got the Cowboys and the Bills. Our offense is clicking right now, and it looks great, man. There was a little bit of struggle there against the Eagles' defensive line, and I'm going to touch on that in a moment because it is concerning, and I did mention it in my film breakdown when we talked about Dak Prescott's performance in Week 14 against the Eagles. But you look at their defense, 14th in the NFL. Again, I'm not going to go out there and say they're a bad defense or anything like that because, again, stats are supplements, right? They allow us to see or make a good hypothesis on what exactly is going to happen. So this is going to be a tough matchup because I don't know if we're going to be able to easily throw the ball as we have been the past couple of times. And this is why the Cowboys, and this is why I said it the past few weeks, the Cowboys needed to get confidence in their running game so that in games like this, in December, on the road, on grass, against physical teams, you could rely on that and not always rely on Dak Prescott's arm. Because even though he's been playing great, right? Front runner for the MVP odds, good teams, great teams have a running game, at least some sort of running game. Now, I'm not saying that the Dallas Cowboys don't have that because if we pull up the stats here to my left and my right are the stats for Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle. And the one thing that you could take away from the past couple of weeks, especially that Eagles game, is the Dallas Cowboys have found a 1-2 punch here. And that's, I would love to have seen like a 100-yard game from the past couple of weeks. We didn't get that, but I think there is comfort and confidence in knowing that they found a 1-2 punch in Rico Dowdle and Tony Pollard, and they're using Rico Dowdle more. So if you take a look at the usage of Rico Dowdle, 12 attempts, 46 yards in that win over the Eagles there. And that's pretty significant because he provides, and that if you look at it, that's his season high tied with the Giants game back on November 12th. And he's so physical, man. Like, he can really get those tough yards, the physical yards, and it really opens things up for Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, 16 carries for 59 yards against the Eagles. I really like Tony Pollard, and we broke this down in some film breakdowns a couple of weeks ago, but you can see his confidence rising. His speed and his acceleration to the empty spaces between the A and the B gaps is getting better week by week. So, would I have loved to seen like a 100-yard game in the past couple of weeks from Tony Pollard? Absolutely, we always want to see that. But there is a silver lining to what we've seen in the past couple of weeks, is there's a clear emphasis to get these guys going and to get some confidence rolling so that it can show up here in the final 4 games. Hopefully, and this is going to be a big thing because I think it's going to be harder to pass the ball on Sunday afternoon. So we do need a little bit of a heartbeat. We do need a little bit of juice from our running game on Sunday afternoon and in the next 4 games if we especially want to win. If we want to win out or at least have a good winning record right here. So that winning formula for the Cowboys needs to include that 1-2 punch between TP20 and Rico Dowdle. And it hasn't been an issue, but I'll just say this because it's tough to do this on the road. but no turnovers. I mean, Dak Prescott has been exceptional not turning the ball over. He's only thrown 2 interceptions in the past 8 games. He's been incredible. And there's especially no fumbles, right? No one's fumbling the ball. Everyone's doing a good job of holding onto the ball. Just keep that going. Just keep that consistent. And, I'm not going to lie. Unbiased and realistically, I'm worried because we're on the road. The weather conditions are different. We're not in a nice, cozy stadium in AT&T Stadium. It just, that ball could be a little bit loose. It could be, I'm just saying, I don't want to put bad, vibes out there. I'm just saying I got to be unbiased and realistic. I'm a Cowboys fan, but I'm unbiased and realistic. And I'm just saying things like that worry me going into Sunday afternoon. But I would also expect a lot of usage from Jake Ferguson. You talk about these cold winter games in December. You need a good tight end. And Jake Ferguson, we talk about confidence rising as the season's going on. Jake Ferguson is riding that high right now. And this would be a win or lose. This would be, I would predict, an exceptional game from Jake Ferguson, where, again, he's setting the tone, but also helping out Dak Prescott. Because it's going to be hard to get the ball out to your wideouts with CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert. But I believe this is going to be a very physical game for Jake Ferguson. And he's been playing so well the past couple of weeks, just not in his ability to catch the ball. And I tweeted about this, or I posted on X about this. I love Jake's ability to catch with his hands and not his chest or use his body. That's a very underrated feature that he does. But he catches with his hands. You look at the catch against the Seahawks. You look at the touchdown catch that got the lead late in the game. It was his hands. If you look at the big catch that on 3rd and 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles, and he had that big run after, he caught it with his hands. And just a really, really great to see his progression. I think he has a big game against the Buffalo Bills, win or lose. I'm also concerned about penalties, just because we still saw that in the Eagles game, and we definitely saw that in the Seahawks. Penalties, holdings, even though the holding calls were a little bit, they were picky on Sunday Night Football. They're just too picky. And I don't mind being picky, but you just got to be consistent, right? So if you're going to be picky with us, you got to be picky with the other team. And that was my only problem with that. But regardless, penalties, we were pretty good on the defensive side. There wasn't any knucklehead plays in terms of penalties on the defensive side, but on the offense. And that's what we've seen with this team on the road. Mental miscues. I mean, if you look at the loss against the Philadelphia Eagles the last time we lost, I mean, there's a lot of penalties on the road. And to be a good road team, to be a great team, you got to be tuned in. And hopefully they're a well-oiled machine going into this game. But that is just something you definitely want to look out for. So let's jump into our offensive predictions. This one's going to be interesting. And look, I got to be unbiased and realistic. I'm always unbiased and realistic. If there's a Cowboys fan channel out there, be sure to follow them because, they're going to tell you that Dak's going to throw 5 touchdowns and CeeDee Lamb's going to have 3 touchdowns. But based on stats and what I see and what I look at in this game, I got to be honest and I got to tell you what I see. So let's talk about Dak Prescott. I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid. I think he has 2 total touchdowns, right? I think he's going to pass one and I think he's going to run one in because I think it's just going to be a physical game like that. Now, this is going to be wild. You're going to call me crazy. I know the comments are going to be flooded about this, but I just believe it's going to be a tough game for him. I believe it's going to be a tough game, and I think it's not the end of the world, right? If we lose this game or if it's a bad game, it's not the end of the world, but I think there's going to be, we're going to drop down a little bit, right? We've been up in the clouds and we've been enjoying this 5-game winning streak and how well Dak Prescott's playing. But I think we come down a little bit and this is just going to be a tough game. This team has to overcome adversity. So yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid. I think Dak Prescott throws a couple of interceptions. Yeah. And that's crazy to say, right? Because he's only thrown 2 interceptions in the past 8 weeks, but this is going to be a tough game. Buckle in, man. And I think this game's going to be perfect to wake up this team going down this stretch. But I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to move on because I know exactly what every single one of you is commenting down below. But let's move on. I believe Jake Ferguson, like I said, he has a big game and he's going to be very vital to this offense on Sunday afternoon. So I believe he gets a touchdown. And there you have it. Those are my offense predictions for Week 15 against the Buffalo Bills. Well, once again, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe for this Week 15 pregame prediction and this matchup against the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be tough, man. And this is my game prediction. It's going to be tough. And again, I have to be unbiased and realistic with you guys. Based on what stats are and what we've seen from this team thus far and what we've seen from them last year. I get it. They're on a 5-game winning streak. Dak Prescott is having an MVP season. Micah Parsons is number 1 in terms of odds of being Defensive Player of the Year. But I just don't like this matchup. I think the Bills are turning it on at a point like they always do, right? And this is going to be a tough game. They're going to be hungry. And the Dallas Cowboys are just out of their element in Buffalo. It's just such a random, crazy game that we never play in Buffalo. I mean, it happens every 4 years. And I think this is a game that will bring us back to earth because we've really been enjoying the awesome things that have been happening in the past 5 weeks. And I'll say, if the Cowboys lose, it's not the end of the world. I mean, what? They're going to be 10-4. And if they still go 3-1 to end the season, they're still in a really good position. And I'm here to tell you, even if the Cowboys lose, they're still going to the playoffs. And they will still have a playoff game. And they will still have an opportunity to compete for the Super Bowl. So is it the end of the world if they lose? No. And I think this is going to be a great test and a great measuring marker for our coaching to see how well we prepare against a non-common opponent. And I think this is really going to test our physicality as a team. And we're going to learn a lot about this game, win or lose, because there's 3 road games in the last 4 games of the season. And there's got to be a little bit of adversity. And, there's got to be a little bit of adversity before we continue to make that leap. And I think this is the adversity. I still think the Cowboys are going to go 3-1 for the rest of the season. But the one game that I believe the Cowboys are going to lose is going to be this one. So yes, I do believe the Dallas Cowboys lose this game. They drop to 10-4 and they lose a road game against the Buffalo Bills. Now my score prediction is I don't believe it's going to be a blowout. I don't believe it's going to be one-sided. This is going to be a tough game. And I think the Cowboys are going to learn a lot from this game in terms of their physicality, in terms of their coaching, in terms of how they match up. And this is going to be a tough game. Like this is going to come down to the final minute. It may take a field goal, but I'm going to say that the Cowboys lose, unfortunately, and that's just my unbiased and realistic opinion. And I believe the Buffalo Bills beat the Dallas Cowboys by 3. I'm saying the Bills win 23-20. So yeah, a little bit of a stinger. I do believe the Cowboys come up short in this game, but I don't believe it's the end of the world. I do believe they ultimately end up 3-1 in these final 4 games. I just have to keep repeating that to let you know that I still believe in this team and everything will be fine. But this is, it's a good measuring marker, and this is going to be a tough game, and I'm excited to see where our team is. And I would be honestly surprised if they blew them out. And if they win, great. They proved it. They proved me especially wrong, and they could care less about my opinion about them. But if they win, shoot, man. If the Cowboys somehow manage to win this game, that's crazy. They would cement themselves as a really good football team. I mean, if they win this game, and forget about if they win it decisively, oh my gosh, that would be a big win to win on the road in Buffalo, even if they're 7-6. That would be crazy. But we'll see what happens, of course, and be sure to check out the rest of the videos. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more Cowboys content. And of course, I will see you guys Sunday afternoon for the game. I will see you then. Go Cowboys.
Prescott